So good morning, everyone. Let me first of all thank you for inviting me to this program, and also I will compliment the organizers choosing this topic for the FDP. Very happy that you are conducting a FDP on the world of photonics. So we'll get started. I'll take about more than 1 hour, and we'll have a lot of discussion in between or whenever you need. So let us go to the first slide. Hello. Yes. As you know, this is an FDP on photonics. So I hope most of you are interested to know what is this photonics. And this being the first lecture, I can have a little bit of time on what is meant by photonics. So this is a brief outline of my presentation. I have put 1 or 2 slides on what is photonics. And I'll show you a lot of photonic devices, like passive devices, functional devices, active devices, and so on and so forth. And then I'll give a lot of applications to optical communications, to optical sensors, optical computing. Of course, recently there are a lot of interest in quantum computing, which I may not have in these slides, but we can discuss. And in between and towards the end, I'll put some work that we have been doing in our lab, particularly on micro ring resonators, photonic band gap structures, MOEMs, and so on. I know I have seen that there are other talks in this FDP on MOEMs, etc. So I hope you will have a lot of photonics during the next 1 week. Let us go to the first slide, please. Next slide. Yes, please. Hello. Hello. Oh, yeah. You're able to hear me?
Sir, yes, sir.
You're able to hear?
Yes, yes.
I think the video has gone. I don't know.
You turn on your videos.
That's what I was trying to do, but I don't know where that is. That has gone.
It's visible now.
Yeah, now it has come. The video has come. Okay. So let us get started with what is meant by photonics. As you know, as was just introduced, photonics is the science and technology of using light for various applications. We can say this is analogous to electronics. As you know, all the devices that we see around, all the devices, systems, and applications are all electronics in nature. You can say we are living in the world of electronics. But you can expect in the near future, as can be observed from the recent developments in the technology, that there's a lot of optics and fiber optics and photonics. So that is the idea behind bringing in this new technology that can be called as photonics. So photonics can be called as science and technology of using light in comparison with electronics. We'll say that this is analogous to electronics. I have put a few points from a communications engineer point of view. See, in electronics, we do all these operations on generation, control, transmission, processing, and display, all these things with the information. So all these things we do with electronics presently. But is it possible to do with light? Is an important question. Why? Because we know that photons or the light particles are also fundamental particles like electrons, protons, neutrons, etc. So already there is a indication of things to come. Like we know we have the fiber optic communications. Fiber optics is being used for many purposes. Nowadays, all the broadband communications we are getting all these broadband communications through fiber optic communication. I think. So just a minute, please. We'll spend a few more minutes on the previous slide and then go to the next one. The video is not adjusting properly, but That's the thing I'm trying to check.
No.
Yes, but that may, okay. So let us look at the fundamental properties of the electrons and photons for comparison purposes. You know that electrons are they have a certain amount of mass, they have a charge on them. And then we use Fermi-Dirac statistics to study the properties of electron devices. In contrast to that, you know that photons don't have a mass. You say that they have a zero rest mass. And also there is no charge. So that is both an advantage as well as disadvantage. Because zero mass implies that it is very quick. We can move them very quickly. And zero charge implies that it's difficult to control. Both ways. We use Bose-Einstein statistics to study the properties of electrons. Okay. So as we go along, we'll get more and more introduction. Let us get to the subject shortly. Okay. Yeah. There are a lot of applications of photonics, as was mentioned earlier, and you will see in the FDP list. There'll be a lot of applications, starting with optical communications, optical sensors, biomedical applications, and so on and so forth. In a historical introduction, we'll discuss more details. Let us go to one more slide, please. Yeah. See, we can, of course, this is what I called as integrated optics. This is analogous to integrated electronics. We can say integrated optics is a technology where we'll put all the components necessary for a given system on a single substrate. We can compare it with integrated electronics that we had until recently. Now, of course, you have the VLSI, where you will put a lot of very high density, lot of components, millions of transistors to make any system like a memory or a transmitter receiver or anything on a small chip. So nowadays we have the VLSI. You can compare the integration of electronics, integration of optics. Even though we may not have so much of integration, but a lot of things can be done on the chip. That is the idea behind integrated optics. In future, definitely we can expect more and more denser integration of optical elements also. As you know, the electronic integration has become saturation. So you cannot increase too much the memory size or something without the increase of the chip size. But there's a lot of scope for photonics. We have not explored the photonics very much yet. There are a lot more applications. At this moment, of course, as you know, the optical communication is well established, whereas other domains are still in the making. You have very small devices made on the chip for sensors, for computing, and so on and so forth. So what I have put here are a few examples of photonic integrated circuits. You have N by N switches, optical switches for networking applications. Then this is FOG, is a fiber optic gyroscope, a chip for fiber optic gyroscope. I'll show you in the near future. And also people have attempted to make the entire optical bench on a silicon wafer. These are some of the examples of optical integrated circuits. Let us go to one more, please. So I want to give you a small example of a photonic integrated circuit. The best is the commercially available is called an optical modulator. Now this is available from several vendors. So the picture that you see is the top view of a optical modulator, and the substrate material is called the lithium niobate. It is a crystal which has got electro-optic properties. That means you can change the properties of the crystal by applying fields or voltages. So what you see is, you see the double lines are all optical waveguides. I may not go detail into optical waveguides. I'm just giving this as an example of a photonic integrated circuit. Just to know the functionality of this, you have double lines which are waveguides in which light can propagate. And the light is divided by this Y branch, the branching circuit you can easily identify. And you have two electrodes, that bluish patches are the electrodes on which you can apply the voltages and induce the fields inside the crystal. And once the light is propagating through these electrodes, it comes back to the combiner, that combining Y branch, you can say, and can come out. So you are manipulating the light in the arms of the interferometer. This entire setup is called the Mach-Zehnder interferometer. without the electrodes. And when you put voltages on these electrodes, you can change the properties of the interferometer. And so you can manipulate the light that is propagating. So most of you know that the light propagation can be described by e power I omega t minus beta z, where beta is the propagation constant, which contains the refractive index. So if you change the refractive index, you can change the phase of the light that is propagated. So you can say that this interferometer, the arm of the interferometer is doing the phase modulation. And by configuring it like this, you are converting into an amplitude modulator. So finally, at the output, you get amplitude modulated light. That amplitude modulation is dependent on the voltage that you apply to the electrons. So the electro-optic effect implies that refractive index of the medium is proportional to the applied field. So this is just as an example. For more detail, you can either study later on or we can discuss later on also. So this has got a very good properties. This modulator, see, normally what we do is in optical communication, you have a laser modulator. You have a laser diode, the injection current of that laser diode, you can modulate and you get a modulated light out. So this is an electronic, optoelectronic device. So the speed is limited. If you want to go for high speed modulation like 10 Gbps, 100 Gbps, it is very difficult to go with the laser. The properties will change. So if you have such a, of course, you will have to launch the light from outside. Here in this particular, you have to launch the light from the outside and you have to put a detector and detect the light. So everything is happening on the chip. So this has got very good features. Like you're not disturbing the light that is coming from the laser. It will have very wide band, like 10 Gbps, 100 Gbps you can think of. Of course, the configuration is not exactly same, but you can make it very wide band by different techniques. And of course, all these wavelengths are all very small and the spacing distances are all small. So you don't require much voltages to induce this electro-optic effect. These are all the various properties of a lithium niobate modulator. How do you make these waveguides and all those? I'll describe in a minute. It is called the titanium diffusion process. Let us go to the next slide to describe a little bit about the process. So this is another device, another example called directional coupler. There are two inputs and two outputs, and you can switch between these states. So if you have S1 and S2 as the inputs, you can have S2 and S1 as the outputs. That is crossover state. When the two waveguides are very, very close together, light can tunnel across these waveguides and complete crossover is possible. Okay, that cannot be described by normal light propagation mechanism in optical waveguides. Okay, you must use the wave theory and you can understand how light crosses over. So I can put electrodes on top of these waveguides once again, and then I can switch back into the bar state. You can have the bar state or crossover state depending on the voltage that you apply. Of course, you can configure this as many other devices like 3 dB coupler you can do, a tap you can do, and so on and so forth. So this is another important device in photonic integrated circuits or integrated optics, which can be used for switching. You can do optical switches based on this mechanism. So on the right hand side, you see the cross section of this one of this middle, for example, you can see there are two buried waveguides you see, and there are two electrodes also that I'm showing you on top of that where you can apply voltages, and below are some fabrication parameters. Typically, we fabricate all these photonic integrated circuits in this system, in a lithium niobate system, by diffusing titanium into that. So it is called a titanium diffused lithium niobate. When you diffuse titanium impurities into the lithium niobate, the refractive index increases a little bit wherever you diffuse, and that becomes waveguide. So typically, we want to operate these in communication band. 1550 nanometers is the communication band, and typical dimensions are a few microns. 4 microns is the depth, 8 microns is the width, and you require very thin layer of titanium to diffuse. You must diffuse for about 1000 degrees centigrade for about 8 hours to get this. This is a technology, lithium niobate technology. As you know, nowadays silicon is very, very popular for VLSI, MEMS, and all these applications. So people have thought about silicon photonics. You can make some of these devices on silicon also. But of course, silicon has got different properties. You cannot make electro-optic effect in silicon. You cannot apply voltages and change the silicon properties. But you can do a lot of optoelectronic effects. You can create junctions, inject electron hole pairs, and change the optical properties. You can make detectors. Lasers you cannot make. As you know, silicon is an indirect band gap material. That means the conduction band and valence band don't overlap. Okay, so that means you cannot make lasers or LEDs in silicon. That requires a 3-5 materials. That is a different technology altogether. You can foresee that because of silicon technology, a lot of devices have been made in silicon. A lot of passive devices in particular, a lot of passive devices have come up with silicon. And in future, you can expect 3-5 materials like gallium arsenide or indium phosphide and so on and so forth to take over all the photonic devices. Okay, I don't have too many slides on the fabrication side now. I suppose you may or I don't know whether you have another lecture on fabrication, but this time I'm concentrating mostly on the principles, some of the basic ideas for photonic integrated circuits. Okay, if necessary, we can maybe tomorrow's lecture I can bring in more technology if you're interested. I'll see your schedule and see whether anyone else is speaking more on technology. Okay, let us go to another slide, please. So this is the lithium niobate technology, what I mentioned until now. Okay, and of course, other technologies like silicon, gallium arsenide, etc., also are available and useful. Of course, there are certain limitations of the technology, but let us see what are the important benefits and features of these photonic integrated circuits. So all these are dependent on the waveguides, which are used as the connecting elements, like wires in electronics. So all these waveguides, usually in the optical communication, we use single mode optical fibers. So in the integrated form also, we think of single mode waveguides. Of course, they have good advantages like very compact size and good design. You can manipulate the modes and so on. If there are many modes, it is difficult to manipulate easily. Okay, which mode you are manipulating, etc., is very difficult to identify, etc. So most of the, because of the connection with the optical communication, we have single mode waveguides in the operation. So you have to design them particularly. There is a very good amount of mathematics for this. But of course, we'll not deal with all these mathematics of the optical waveguide theory. And of course, like in the VLSI, due to integration, all these alignment problems and packaging problems have reduced. So the device will be robust to vibrations, temperature changes, and so on and so forth. That is also a very good advantage. You just imagine if we were to do it on the like a PCB, like olden days in electronics, we use PCBs, breadboards, etc. If you have to do this on an optical cable, they are very, very prone to vibrations and all these problems. So alignment and all these things have reduced. And of course, you can control these light propagation. Just now in the previous examples, I've shown you a modulator. You can apply voltages and control the propagation characteristics or even the function of the device. So it is easy to control the guided waves. You can just compare with fiber optics. If light is propagating in optical fibers, it's almost impossible to manipulate. You cannot change much, except that light will be taken from one point to the other, even if the fiber is bent, it propagates, but you don't have much control. I also mentioned that you have very low operating voltages due to short lengths, and also due to a small gap between the electrodes, you have very low, very high capacitance and fast operations and so on. So, and of course, because the size dimensions are very, very small, the optical power density inside the optical waveguides is very large. So if there are a lot of nonlinear effects which can be used, these are all the advantages of photonic integrated circuits. Of course, we can say just caution at this moment, it is not equivalent to VLSI in electronics. Even though the dimensions can be made short. As you know, the wavelength of the light is of the orders of 1 micrometer. 400 to 700 is visible. 1530 to 1560 is communication band. So around 1 micron is the dimension. So you cannot make all these devices too small, unlike in electronics. Electrons have very heavy mass. If you see the wavelength of electron is very small, of the orders of nanometers, whereas this is of the orders of micrometers. So you cannot make too small. But of course, people deal with what is called the functional integration. You need not make exact equivalent of electronic circuits in optics. For example, if you want to make a Fourier transform of an image, in electronics, it's a very complicated thing. Whereas in optics, if you make a lens on the chip, you can easily get a Fourier transform of the image. So the lens will be a very small element. You need not make hundreds and thousands of transistors, memories, and all these things if you want to do Fourier transform. So there are a lot of advantages in using wave optics and also the quantum optics. Some things which are not possible with electronics also are possible. Okay. Yes, let us go to the next slide, please. So let us look at a brief history of how all these things have developed. As you know, the laser is invented in 1960. Okay, that is the starting point of what can be called as modern optics. Until then, a lot of optics was there, spectroscopy, holography, so many things people have done. But the invention of laser has opened up a lot of applications like optical communication, biomedical optics, and also this integration of different elements on a chip. But integrated optics also has started, you can say, by 60s. Most of the theory of these waveguides, photonic ICs have come from the microwave domain. So already a lot of mathematics was available for electromagnetic theory in the microwave domain. So people have taken the clues from that and then developed the optical waveguide theory. Then, of course, technology has become important. As you know, starting with the invention of the transistor, you have seen a lot of electronics has developed. And in the 70s is the big domain of ICs. So along with electronics, a lot of optoelectronic devices also have developed on the chip, like LEDs, laser diodes, photodetectors, modulators, and so on. All the technology has started the origin in 1970s. And as you know, in the 80s, optical communication systems have become important. A lot of people have laid fiber optic cables all over the globe and in India also. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, optical fibers also, along with optical fiber theory, has been developed in 1960s. But in 80s, you have a lot of systems and applications that have been put. Then, of course, in 1990s, people have started thinking about networks. You have a lot of networks, starting with the internet. People have thought about a lot of LAN, then metro area networks, and so on. So people have thought about why not we use fiber optics techniques or optical techniques in the optical networks. So one of the important developments is called the WDM, wavelength division multiplexing. People wanted to switch between different users and broadcasting and so on using optical techniques. They want to avoid electronics because that is going to be a bottleneck. The speeds are limited, the bandwidth is limited to use electronics. They want to use the full bandwidth of fiber optics. So people have thought about optical networks. So as time progressed, a lot of developments have taken place in VLSI. And also at the turn of the century, as you know, the mobile revolution and so many things, new technologies have prompted people to go for more and more optics. So people think about all optical components nowadays, all the systems as much as possible in the optical domain. Whatever is best possible in the electronics domain, like signal processing, can be done in electronics. Whereas the communication and to some extent sensing, etc., can be done with optical devices. And more recently, as you know, I should have one more 2010 onwards, you can say the next decade, there is a lot of developments in quantum communications. The next decade, you can say the last 10 years, people have thought about quantum applications because, as you know, all these devices and the photons, electrons, etc., are all quantum in nature, not purely classical. So people thought about quantum communications. Here again, photonics is going to play an important role. And it appears that the best way or the most practical way to implement quantum communications and computing is through photonics. That, of course, we will not deal in this lecture too much. Once again, I'll have to see what is your schedules. And then if necessary, I can discuss a little bit about quantum in tomorrow's talk. But of course, tomorrow is my goal is of optical MEMS. But I was observing that Mandeep Singh and others are also talking about MEMS. So I'll have to change a little bit tomorrow. Let me see. Let us go to another slide, please. So let us start with optical waveguides. As I mentioned, optical waveguides will form the basic interconnecting elements. Then you can make a lot of passive components like branching circuits, tapers, couplers, and so on. And then you can also create dynamic effects like you have seen the electro-optic effect earlier. You can also make thermo-optic, opto-optic, magneto-optic. All these effects can be used to make new devices like modulators, switches, and so on. Then, of course, we also mentioned about optoelectronic effects. If you are using silicon or gallium arsenide and those things, a lot of optoelectronic effects can be there. You can change the carrier concentrations and so on and get a lot of good optical properties. And finally, of course, you know, the technology is going to be important. Finally, how do you implement these? How do you realize these devices? And how do you commercialize is also going to be an important problem for the photonics. At this moment, as you know, you don't have much applications. Of course, applications we have, but not much technology in India. In academic institutions, you can do a lot of research in photonics like this, like modulators, small things. But when it comes to real application in optical communications or optical computing, then definitely the technology available in India is not sufficient. We need a lot of industry and many people interested to commercialize this and so on. Such a situation exists globally. It may not be available in India, but globally it exists. So, and of course, we know in India we have a lot of potential for application, both for communications, then for computing, and so on and so forth. So a lot of potential is there in India. We are a lot of users. People buy a lot of things, and we can use it also for many applications like education, healthcare, agriculture, and all these things. We need a lot of technology. And photonics, as we see, can find an important application in India. But the technology is not available here. So we'll have to buy from outside. So it is very, very important that we develop these technologies, tie up with some industries outside, and implement it for ourselves. That should be one of the goals, not simply the research. Research, of course, is needed. So the government or whoever at higher ups should put efforts so that we get more companies, industries to India in this subject. This is also important for our students. See, if my students ask me, what will I do after doing this PhD or studying this photonics, then we don't have a good answer. So there's not much industry in India where they can take up jobs. So we'll advise them to go abroad for higher studies or take up some big, join some big industries abroad and so on. So that is not very beneficial to our people. We'll simply have to buy these things from outside. So those are the non-commercial, non-technical problems that we have. But of course, they will have a lot of bearing on our technology. Let us go to another slide, please. So I do not want to speak too much on the technology part. I'll put one slide later. So we are continuing with the waveguides. These are all the cross sections of optical waveguides that we come across. So these are all cross sections. The first one is called the buried waveguide. You diffuse a small traces of some material like titanium in lithium bit into, and you get a what is called as buried waveguide. The region shown as NF has got higher refractance compared to the substrate. So light will propagate in that. Similarly, you can make what are called the ridges waveguides. So you can coat some other material on top of the substrate and etch out unnecessary portions. You get a ridge waveguide. So you are seeing a trapezoidal ridge. Similarly, you can also induce waveguiding action. So you take a slab waveguide. Slab means the whole top surface is the waveguide, and top of that you put some other dielectric medium, whatever, like polymer or metal or whatever. So you are changing the guiding region properties. So that will also form as a waveguide, which can be called as a loaded type of waveguides. And in the beginning, I have shown you, you can induce refractive index changes. These are called induced waveguides, voltage induced or current induced waveguides you can make in. These are all the various types of waveguides that you come across. It depends on the technology also. Whether you use a glass or whether you use lithium niobate or silicon or gallium arsenide, your technology changes and different possibilities are there. Of course, theory is somewhat common. We'll have to adapt to what is the technology that we have. So if you have a theory for the buried waveguides, you can modify, or the mathematical techniques will be similar to ridge waveguides, but the configuration, geometry, etc. are different. So you can easily adapt to whatever technology that. Of course, you will need newer phenomena, like if you are using optoelectronic effects in the devices, you need a new theory also. Okay, so but we need a lot of waveguides. Waveguide is the fundamental element. So that's why I'm showing you this. Let us go to one more slide, please. So this is a small chart about technology. I have put a lot of technologies on the tabletop, starting with the polymers, glass, then crystals, silicon. On in the end, you have magnetic materials. All these things are possible materials for integrated optics. So people have simply translated or from whatever has happened in electronics and thick film technology, they have adapted to optics. Okay, and different fabrication processes are needed for different technologies. On the left hand side, you see different fabrication techniques. The simplest ones being the deposition. You can do spin coating, you can do vacuum deposition, sputtering, so on and so forth. So many things are possible. Those are all very simpler things, not very sophisticated VLSI techniques. But of course, if you are using 3-5 materials and more recent technology, you have to go for epitaxial techniques. So a lot of possibilities or a lot of options are there for technology. Is not very standardized. Unlike silicon, the technology for photonic integrated circuit is not much standardized. Of course, for if someone wants to do academically research, etc., a lot of possibilities are there. You need not stick to one particular technology. Of course, some of how the technologies are very easy, some of them are difficult, some of them are well established, some of them will require a lot of infrastructure. In general, if you want to go for more and more sophisticated devices, more and more sophisticated technology, you will require bigger equipment, more costly equipment. We may not be able to do in one place, like in a college. But of course, some simpler ones you can do in your college. If you want to do glass integrated optics, you can do in your college. Okay. So those things we can discuss as we go along. I want to focus more and more on the technology side. Let us go to next slide, please. I'll show you some passive devices. So a lot of passive devices can be made with optical waveguides. You can do power dividers. You can do polarizers, multiplexers, demultiplexers, gratings, lenses. These are all passive devices. That means you don't need extra control. Just a minute, please. So let us go one after the other, some of these passive devices. So all this can be made on whatever technology you want, like glass or lithium niobate or silicon, etc. Because these are all passive. You don't need, of course, the dimensions and the design techniques and the technologies will be different, but you don't need control. That is the importance of these passive devices. Let us go to next slide, please. So you can easily identify what they do. The functionality is very evident from, of course, the design is not so simple. You cannot say you can design these easily, but you can easily know what they can do. You see the first symmetric Y branch. You have an input waveguide, you have two output waveguides, and there's a tapering region and a branching portion. So when you launch light at the input, it can divide into two output ports. So you can easily imagine what happens, how you can do this with fiber optics. If you are using if you want to do a fiber optic coupler, so you have to fuse fibers, and 100% 50-50 branching is not guaranteed. Okay, so that's the good feature of photonic integrated circuits. By using a proper lithographic pattern, you can create whatever type of devices you want. So you see an asymmetric two branch, you have a 1/3 coupler, then 1/4 branching circuit. Also you see at the bottom, you can cascade 1/2 couplers to make 1/4 circuits and so on. So as I mentioned, the design is not so straightforward. Of course, nowadays you have a lot of simulators. You have a lot of simulators now. You don't need to solve all these mathematically directly. So you just pick and place the structure and you launch your solver and it simulates. It shows how light propagates, use all the 3D picture and so on and so forth. That is very, very nice if you want to demonstrate in a class, or if you want to design also, it's good. Actually, they will give decent results. Okay. So the design also is good. If you want to do some small project or so, you can use the software tools to design. But I would like to caution, if someone wants to do research, then these are not very suitable, because all these softwares have all the equations and the theory, very old theory. Long ago, all these things have been developed and they have put in that. Whereas in your research, you will try to do something new. You are expected to do something new if you want to publish, etc. So all these tools are not very suitable for research. Okay, let us go to another slide. So these are directional couples. When I said that when you make two waveguides very, very close together, the light can tunnel across them, and you can mathematically, you can solve, you can study all these. You can, in fact, I won't mention here at this moment. I did not mention during the waveguides. You have to, what you have to do for any of these optical devices is you have to set up the wave equation. Okay, many of you know about the wave equation. And the input to the wave equation is the structure, the geometry of your device in terms of its refractive index. Refractive index is the fundamental property of optical property of these devices. So how the refractive index varies across different regions, you have to have n of x comma y or x comma y comma z. You put that into the wave equation and solve for the modes of the waveguides. So the mode field patterns and the propagation constants in different regions is what you have to solve with the boundary conditions and all in picture. So that is the mechanism or the process to study these problems. And it's very interesting. Sometimes you can reduce the mathematics, can simplify, a lot of interesting things can be there. So that is why, that's how you will study all these problems. And in particular, I'm showing you about the directional couples. You have what is called the coupled mode theory. There will be light that is propagating in forward direction, light can propagate in the backward direction, it can tunnel across the waveguides. All these things can be very interestingly studied by using the optical waveguide theory. So you can, different configurations you come up with. For example, I am showing you a 3 waveguide coupler. Instead of having only 2 waveguides coupling, 3 waveguides can be coupled. The middle one is a joint waveguide. The gap has become 0 compared to the first one. So these are all the interesting problems that someone can solve. Some of these are not solved in practice also. In the literature also, they'll not be there. And you can, if someone wants to do research, these are all very good problems. Applications can be different. Sometimes the theory may be available already, but the application can be new. Those are all the ideas that someone can explore. I'll talk about how you do your research later, towards the end or tomorrow. Let us go to one more slide, please. So this is a very required device. In optical networks, you need star couplers if you want to distribute power across different users, or if you want to broadcast, you will need star couplers. Star couplers will contain several ports. One of the port will act as an input port, and some other ports will be acting as the output ports, where the light has to be distributed equally, or whatever the ratio you want. So in this example, we have a mode mixing region and several input ports and several output ports. So in the mixing region, light can be redistributed and goes at the output ports. Of course, it's not easy to solve this problem from mathematics point of view. Okay, from a geometrical point of view, you can attempt it. And there are some tools nowadays which can enable you to solve these geometrical problems. So geometrical optics is quite well known. You can apply it to many of such problems. The bottom one is another type of star coupler called the reflecting mode star couplers. all the ports are at one side. That means you can have a very small device. Whenever you have inputs and outputs on the opposite sides of the chip, you require very, very long length. Whereas if you put them in some particular fashion, like along the circle or all along the input, then you can make more compact star couplers. Okay, let us go to another slide. So as you know, light is an vector wave. You have all the components, Ex, Ey, Ez, and Hx, Hy, Hz. 6 components are there for the optical field. So you can manipulate. For example, you have what are called TE modes and TM modes. In like some of you must have studied electromagnetics. So in the free space, you have TE, TM modes. In the waveguides, of course, they're also like TE-like and TM-like modes, not exactly TE, TM modes or TEM modes. They are hybrid modes, a combination of TE, TM, where all the components may be there. So you need to, if you want to do what is called a polarizer, is you want light to be oriented only in one particular direction. The electric field of the light wave, you want only in particular direction. So that is called a polarizer. So you say, for as a simpler example, if you have TE and TM modes in the input light, you can create a device where only you have a TE mode at the output. How do you make that is an important question. So as you know, in conventional optics, you use anisotropic materials like crystals like calcite, quartz, etc. are anisotropic. That means light propagates in different directions with different velocity and so different properties. So in this particular case, I have taken a glass waveguide, a glass substrate, made a waveguide on top of that. Top of that, you coat an anisotropic material like calcite. So what happens due to this cover being different anisotropic material, the substrate properties and waveguide properties also change. You can make a very good polarizer. Only particular orientations are selected. Similarly, you can make polarization controllers. Polarization controller means you have to have an external field, something to control. If you want to have TE out, you can get TE out. If you want to get TM out, you can get TM out. That is what is called a polarization controller with some control. So it is also possible to think of such things. Of course, there are a lot of configurations which can, given the functionality, you can think of how to obtain this. That is the challenge of engineering. We'll go to another slide, please. So mux demuxes are needed in many applications in networks and communications and so on. So in this case, I'm showing you a device where the optical fiber is bringing in light, many channels. They can say, for example, 4 channels are there in input, and you want to separate them out all. You want to place them all at the different points on the output plane. Okay. So in this example, I'm using gratings. The small vertical lines, what you see, are called the gratings. That means grating, I'll show you in the next slide also. The function of the grating is to select one particular wavelength. So one particular wavelength can be diffracted in some direction, and all others pass through. The next one will take in the second wavelength, and will pass it on to the second port. So like that, you can make a demultiplexer. So gratings can be used for multiplexing and demultiplexing action. This is called a transmission type of grating. Similarly, you can have gratings to reflect. So the gratings are used in lasers also. When you want to make lasers, nowadays most of the lasers are on the waveguides. So you can put gratings on top of these waveguides and reflect light back and forth. You can make cavities by using the gratings. In olden days, people used to use cleaving of the end faces, etc., to make laser cavities. Now, people use very compactly gratings and other elements to reflect light in a short region of space and create very good lasers, very powerful lasers, as well as very clean lasers. Clean lasers in the sense you have very sharp spectral characteristics with very little noise and all those good characteristics. Okay. So let us go to another device. So lenses are one of the fundamental elements in optics. Whenever we talk about optics, lens is the first thing that comes to our mind. So lens is optical device which will focus light into particular direction. It can also spread the light. It can also defocus the light, and a lot of optical components like telescopes, microscopes, etc., are based on the properties of the lenses. This is a very interesting phenomenon in optics, focusing of light and manipulating in small regions. So you can make, as an example, let us consider focusing of light. In this example, I have taken what is called the gradient index lens. So whatever you see, that blackish patch vertical is the refractive index variation. The refractive index is maximum and the axis and gradually reducing outside. Many of you who have done antennas can recall that you have a pattern, that sin x by x type of pattern in many diffraction phenomena. So I can make the grating according to that pattern. You can have maximum index in the middle, gradually reducing outside. So that can form a very good lens. It's called a Fresnel lens. You can have a gradient index Fresnel lens. See, we have to compare this with a conventional lens. Conventional lens is a bulk device. You have a plate sort of thing in which, or a circular, you see, many of you are familiar with a circular object, which will act as a grating, like in your grating in your cell phone. The cell with this lens in a cell phone, it has got a converging or bulging edge. So in this is a different type of grating. It is based on the gradient index. You can change the refractive index along that path such that it will form a converging lens. Instead of refractive index, you can also change the thickness of the region and you can make lenses. So two different types of lenses are easily possible in integrated optics. Of course, a lot of design will be there, focal length, then all the aberrations, how much, and so on and so forth. Let us go to one more slide. So we have talked a lot about gratings, is it not? So one of the important purpose of gratings in the modern times, in the recent times, is for input-output coupling. How do you launch light from an optical fiber into an optical waveguide or a circuit? How do you take the light out of the optical circuit? It's an important question. People have been struggling. Even now, it's not very perfect, you can say. If you want to do it in a lab, it's a very difficult thing. But of course, nowadays it is possible. A lot of developments have taken place in input-output coupling. So grating is an important device which is useful in input-output coupling. And there are a lot more other uses. I'm showing you D is a reflector, like in the lasers. I said grating can be used as a reflector. You can also use a grating for the mode conversion. If you want to convert from first mode to second mode or third mode, etc., you can use grating couplers, and so on and so forth. A lot of lenses can be made. So these are all the applications of gratings. Grating is nothing but a periodic variation of refractive index. There will be high index, low index, high index, low index, etc. Of course, in this talk, we are talking about only about waveguide components, but many of you know that fiber gratings are very, very popular. Optical fibers can be made with gratings inside that. You can create high and low refractive indices along the length of grating, and you can make what are called these FBGs, fiber Bragg gratings. So they have many, many applications in sensors. I hope some of you, one of the speakers will speak about fiber optic sensors, one of these lectures in your FDP. So what I'm showing you is called an arrayed waveguide grating. It has got that arcs of circles, what you see are the waveguides with the different lengths. Just a minute, we'll spend a little bit of time on that, then come back. So you have waveguides with a different lengths. So light, when it propagates in that, it has got different phase shift. In each of these waveguides, you have a different phase shift. And when they superpose, like what you are seeing at the output end, they can superpose with at a particular wavelength only. So blue wavelength or one wavelength can focus on one output port, orange one or another wavelength and focus on another output port, and so on. So you have this array AWG has got several input ports and several output ports, and there's a mixing region called the input slab waveguide, where the light is diverged across all these variable optical waveguide lengths, and then there's output mixing region where they will combine. So that suppose you just assume that one of the waveguides, third one is bringing in the light, of different wavelengths. So each of these wavelengths can be spread across the output ports. So that is the idea behind arrayed waveguide grating. The crux of the problem is you are using the phase shift in the different. So these are called the delay lines. This is one of the important applications in photonics nowadays, both for communication applications, many applications. You have delay lines, because one of the things I didn't mention in the beginning was it's very difficult to make memories in optics. Unlike RAM and flash memories, etc., in electronics, they play a very significant role in electronics. So you don't have very good memories in optics. But a lot of functions are needed, like correlation of input headers and so on. All these can be done by using the delay lines. And still a lot more development is needed. Of course, people are working on optical memories, like holographic memories and so on, but they are still primitive compared to what we have in electronics. So the electronics technology has developed memory and indispensable elements. Memories are one of the most important elements in electronics, which are not easily possible in optics. That is an important problem we should overcome. Of course, there are a lot of advantages. Options are there for us. Instead of using memories, you can do a lot of other things. Fine, let us go. One more. Yeah, now let us look at some dynamic devices. We have seen all the passive devices until now. We'll go to some dynamic devices. So dynamic devices will control the light propagation by some of these mechanisms. We have already seen electro-optic effect, how it will influence what devices can be made, etc. Similarly, you can make thermo-optic devices. Magnetic fields can affect the optical properties. Acoustic fields, that means strain induced on the crystal, can also be very useful. A lot of nonlinear effects exist. So these are all the various possibilities to control these and make devices like switches, modulators. So many devices will require the control of light. So the integrated optics is the best way to do all these things. Okay, let us go to some examples. So this is a very simple example of a thermo-optic device. That means you can heat the waveguide and change its properties. So you are seeing two electrodes. On this, the interferometer is familiar to you now. You have a Mach-Zehnder interferometer. On top of this, you have two electrodes. The blackish patches are the electrodes, and just a minute, please. The blackish that electrodes are heating elements. You can apply current to these elements and then heat them. They're quite long. You can see that this is a big device. 5 millimeters is the size of the electrodes. Then, of course, 4 microns is the typical design of glass waveguide. Angles also are very small. You must note that even though I'm showing you some 30 degrees or 60 degrees, angles are very, very small, 1 degree or 2 degrees only. And that means the device is very long. And of course, I have spaced the waveguides far apart. 20 microns is a quite large spacing. So this can be made in glass using proton exchange or potassium ion exchange and so on. Heating elements can be anything, titanium or chrome or gold or whatever that is from the thin film. Okay. So this can act as an on-off switch also. Let us go to another application. So electro-optics we have already seen. I would like to mention here, the first one is a lumped element configuration. The same configuration which I showed you earlier, but all the voltage is applied at one point, and it can be very useful for low frequency applications. If you want to go for very, very high speeds like gigahertz or so, of course, you have to modify these electrodes. As you know, if you are operating with very high frequencies, you are the microwave domain. Okay. So these electrodes will act as microstrip lines. Some of you who are studying microwaves know about microstrip lines, strip lines, coplanar waveguides, all these things. But of course, here we have optical waveguides, but the electrodes are microwave devices. So the right side, what you see is called a traveling wave configuration, where the electrode is spread and you have a matching elements like the source at one end and then matching load at the other end, and the current or the control signal propagates as a microwave. Okay, microwave propagates on these electrodes, light wave propagates in the optical waveguides below, and there's interaction between the microwave and light wave, and you get a very good, interesting features in these devices. Okay, so you can go for very high speed modulations like 10 gigahertz, 100 gigahertz using this by. This subject is called the microwave photonics. There are two aspects of microwave photonics. One is devices like this high speed modulators, control, and so on. The other thing that most people are interested in, high speed optical communications. If you want to go for higher and higher speed optical communications, then the microwaves and light waves propagate the same channel like an optical fiber, and you have to study their interaction and all the effects. Okay. One more, please. You can make switches using electro-optic effects. So what you see is you can apply voltage 0 volts or 1 volt or whatever you like. You can switch the voltages and make optical switches. So in the example that we showed earlier, or even here, if you apply voltages, light can become bar state. So the light can remain in the same wavelength. If you don't apply any voltages, it is in the crossover state. And when you apply voltages, it becomes the bar state. And you can make optical switches and also cascade them like what I will show in a minute. You can make optical switches by using electro-optic effect. Here, below, you are seeing another configuration where you have split electrodes. So electrodes are divided into different regions so that you have more control on the light switching and all these properties. Okay, let us go to one more slide. This is called acousto-optic effect. That means you can apply voltages on the crystal and you can induce stress waves, and the refractive index of the medium will depend on the stress wave that is propagating. As you know, all the stress waves are periodic in nature. Stress will be high in one portion, low in the other portion, and so on. Sometimes these are all traveling waves also. There can be standing waves as well as traveling acoustic waves or stress waves. So they will induce gratings. If there is a stress on the device, you have a, I hope it is visible to everyone, or has it gone? The slides are visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, because in my other device, I have logged in as a participant where it got disconnected. Whereas in the other device, I'm seeing these slides. Okay, let us get going. So you can induce acoustically, you can induce the refractive index changes. So once you have a grating induced, you know the properties of gratings. So you are seeing an incident light which can be deflected across to different directions by applying the voltages. You can control the grating properties by RF voltage that you are applying. Okay, so you can deflect the light by using these acousto-optic effect, and you can change it also dynamically. You can deflect different directions. That direction of deflection can be controlled by RF voltage that you give to this. You can imagine the bottom figure which you have, where you have electrode pattern which is alternatively positive and negative. So that also can create a high and low refractive index regions, and you can deflect the light. For example, you can convert or you can control the polarization. If you launch a TE polarization, you can get a TM polarization at the output. So gratings can be used, as we mentioned earlier, gratings can be used for mode conversion. Okay, so you can use acousto-optic effect for polarization control. A lot of things can be done. For example, you can give a variable signal to the electrodes, to the inducing electrodes, and you can also modulate the light, and you can find the correlation between the input light and the RF. All these are possible with acousto-optic effect. So people say that you can do optical signal processing by using the acousto-optic devices. Let us go to one more. One more, next slide, please. So I'm showing you some magnetic devices. So magneto-optic means you must induce changes by applying the magnetic fields. How do you apply magnetic fields? Once again, you can apply currents onto the substrate and the electrodes, and you can induce magnetic fields. But you need magnetic materials. Not all materials are magnetic. So materials like garnets, lithium, aluminum garnet, lithium, iron garnet, these are all the devices which have got magnetic effects. So their mu can be changed by applying the currents. So you can magnetize the materials, and you can get all these control elements. So in the magnetic materials, so you can make polarizers, polarization controllers. So many effects can be obtained by using magnetic. In fact, you can also propagate magnetic fields. You can make gratings by magnetic effects. So all these things are possible with magnetic fields. One more, please. I have not put too many slides on the nonlinear effects, but nonlinear effects imply that your device properties are dependent on the power levels of the fields. So you must contrast with the linear devices. Whatever we discussed earlier are all linear devices. That means the function is independent of what is the power that you apply. Suppose you inject twice the power, you will get twice the power out, or whatever. Like these are all not dependent on the power level. Whereas nonlinear optical devices depend on the power level. If you inject more light, for example, higher intensity, it can deflect into the substrate instead of going into the waveguide. In fact, you can also think in terms of refractive index depending on the light intensity. Okay, so in this example, I'm showing you what is called a second harmonic wave generator. So you have an input field at 40 nanometers, and you get the second harmonic wave at 420, double the frequency. That means half the wavelength. It is possible to generate. Of course, it's not so straightforward. You have to have a lot of control mechanism there, like the direction and so on, and have to be controlled. But you can generate second harmonic. You can understand in terms of the polarization vector. In electromagnetics, you use polarization vector P. So all the nonlinear effects are in terms of the P. So susceptibility into electric field, susceptibility 2 into electric field, it's a chi1, chi2, chi3. These are all the coefficients that come across in the nonlinear effects. So there are a lot of other effects, like you can have two-wave mixing, three-wave mixing, and so on and so forth. Second harmonic generation is one example. Okay, you can, without having a laser at 420 nanometers, you can create a second harmonic wave. So in fact, these can be called as a dynamic device or an active device also. In some materials, the nonlinear effects are very, very prominent. Lithium niobate is another example of a nonlinear optical effect device. But of course, the coefficient is not so high. You require a material with very good nonlinear optical coefficients. Okay, if you want to do nonlinear effects. Otherwise, for up to high powers, there's not much nonlinear. That's of course good in some sense. In optical communication, it is good. But if you want to make new devices, you deliberately want materials with nonlinear properties. Okay. Yes. One more, please. So let us go to a few optical systems. Okay. Of course, these are all very simple pictures that I'm showing you. You can easily understand and appreciate. We'll have a fiber optic communication system. You have an optical information system and sensing, etc. Let us go to first application. We discussed that we need optical switching for networks and all these communication applications. So you are seeing 4 input ports and 4 output ports on this chip. And it is possible to direct light from one port, say third port, into the fourth port or first port. So what you see here is electro-optic switches cascaded and interconnected in some particular fashion. So each of these S1, S2, S3, S4 can be put in crossover state or bar state. Depending on the state, you will have the routing table. Okay. Say, for example, if you launch light to the third port and put the S3, S2 in crossover state, it goes into the last port and once again it crosses over. And if you put the S5 in bar state, the third port light can come out of the fourth port. Similarly, you can work out if I put S1, S3, S5 in the crossover state, the first signal can come out of the last port. You can work out all combinations. Of course, it is not possible to get all combinations of input and outputs, but you can think of newer ideas where you can route the signals in this way. This is a good application to a fiber optic communication or of optical networks. And this can be made in a lithium niobate crystal where you can make electro-optic devices. And of course, there is a problem of input output we discussed earlier. Fiber is a very thick device, like 9 microns. The waveguide is only 4 microns weight, so you have to have tapers. All those practical problems are there. So generally, people fabricate or package these devices along with the fibers. So you will only see fibers in and out. Internally, you have a crystal like this, and you can do the function. One more, please. This is an example of an optical information processing system. It's a very hypothetical one. Of course, some people, Japanese, have made also this thing. There are two lenses that you are seeing here, geodesic lenses they are called. So they can focus and defocus the light. So a laser diode is from the external, it's coupled into this device, and photodetector array also is coupled externally. So this is on a lithium niobate wafer, and you can make a lenses, and you can, there's also a grating in between the two lenses. You can create a grating. The IDT pattern is what you see. Short transducer is the IDT pattern to which you will apply RF input field, and a acoustic wave can propagate between the lenses, which will deflect the light into different directions. So that is the idea behind this optical information processing system. You can also change the input and laser diode modulations so that you can get a correlation between the elements. All those things can be done. Optical signal processing or computing can be done by using such ideas, such effects. Okay, one more, please. So this is an example of a fiber optic gyroscope chip that we made in our lab some time ago. When I was a student, our Professor Selvarajan was handling a project with the DRDO on making this fiber optic gyroscope. So what you see here, the small round coil is actually a big coil of the size of 10 centimeters, where you pass light in the clockwise direction and anti-clockwise direction. The main idea in a gyroscope is you have to measure the rotation rate. If a missile or aircraft or something is rotating, we should be able to measure how fast or slow it is rotating. For that, what is used is called the Sagnac effect. Light is launched in the clockwise direction and anti-clockwise direction, and that phase difference between these two is measured and calibrated against the angular velocity. That means delta phi is proportional to the omega. So that's the idea behind the gyroscope. But if you want to make a gyroscope, you require all these components, like a polarizer is needed, like a phase modulator is needed, a coupler is needed. Laser diode or LED and photodiode are coupled from the outside. A lot of signal processing has to be done after you detect. But this gyroscope chip is a very important device. So in our lab, when I was a student, this fiber optic gyroscope was made. Later on, we have made a chip of this lithium niobate, whatever you are seeing here. So this is one of the important devices. And now it is a practical device. People are making routinely in the DRDO labs are making all this chip as well as the coil very routinely every day, and it is saving a lot of money to our these defense labs. Yes, this is one example. Let us go to one more. So this is an example of a disk pickup device. Japanese are very fond of, at some point of the time before the flash RAMs, of course, even now, they are fond of very compressing a lot of data into a small space. High density devices like Blu-ray discs and all these things they have worked in the beginning, when the earlier stages, they were making all these things. So this is an example called disk pickup device, where you can use optical chip to read and write information onto the optical disc. So you see what is called a focusing grating lens. What you see there is a rectangular focusing lens which can focus light onto the pits, onto the optical disc. And the reflected light also is collected from the same lens, and it is directed into the photodetectors that you see here. There is a laser diode and a photodetector circuit which can be used to process. Okay, this is an example of application of integrated optics for memory applications. Let us go to some more, please. So I will go to a few new topics before I close. So one of the most important topics of current interest is for someone who wants to, these three applications that I'm showing you are very, very amenable for research. If someone wants to do research, they can pick up. In fact, maybe I'll tell at this moment that if you want to have latest developments in photonics, you looking at journals of photonics. As you know, see, of course, you have an IEEE student branch in college, is it not? Many of you have IEEE student branches. And IEEE, as you have, there are 39 societies, like antennas, then microwaves, solid state circuits, signal processing, communication, photonics, and so on and so forth. There are 39 societies, depending on different directions. So all these applications, optics and photonics, will come under photonics society. So if someone is interested to get latest developments in photonics, you will have to look at IEEE Photonics Society. And as you know, we have a lot of programs. You know that there are many student branches in Bangalore and Karnataka, where there are Photonics Society chapters. So if faculty and students are interested, they can take part in those activities. Maybe Dr. Rajani and others will mention more about Photonics Society of Bangalore activities. So there are a lot of activities are there, including an internship program for students and so on and so forth. A lot of opportunities for those who want to do PhD also. So please have a look at IEEE website, Photonics Society chapter, and try to join if you are interested in recent developments. So this is one of the areas of interest, ring resonators. So one of the important problems in photonics is the effective use of the chip, particularly if you are using silicon photonics. So silicon people are interested in the silicon real estate. Okay, you have to make devices very compact. All the devices that you saw, like interferometer, directional couplers, etc., are very thin and long. That's not very comfortable. It's not very suitable for high density integration. So people have come out with what are called this ring resonators. You make the waveguide in the form of a ring. There are two waveguides for input and output, called bus waveguides. So light can be launched. What you are seeing in the middle is called a simulation of that. So light can go round and round in the ring waveguide, and only for a particular frequency it will resonate. It has got very good properties. So you can also make rings of rings, arrays of rings, many rings along the same bus for different applications. You can use this for filter applications, for communication applications, for sensors. So many things can be done with these ring resonators. Okay, let us go to another application. Yes, please. So there are all these applications of ring resonators, from starting with the delay lines, memories, bistable elements, even quantum can make use of these ring resonators. Okay, we'll need not delve too much on that. You can read them later. We'll go ahead. Yes, please. We'll go to some pictures where there is. So you can easily calculate or study these ring resonant properties mathematically. You can form a matrix of input-output configurations. It's not very difficult. The important problem in the ring resonator is how the light couples from the bus to the ring is an important problem. For that, good amount of mathematics is there. But finally, you can easily get the matrix of the coupling coefficients and then see what is the spectrum, what is the quality factor, so many parameters, full width, Higgs maximum, all these spectral characteristics can be studied in a very simple way. Okay, all these mathematics is available. Okay, let us go to some more applications. So this is another important topic in photonics in the recent times, called the photonic bandgap structures. In photonic bandgap structures, you have periodic arrangement of refractive index, like holes. You can create holes on the crystal, or you can create pillars, complement of these holes on the same silicon wafer. All this, what you are seeing is a top view. And also grating, of course, is another photonic bandgap structures. So you can say these photonic bandgap structures are analogous to electronic bandgap structures. So in electronic crystals, you have conduction bands, valence bands, etc., because of the periodic arrangement of ions. Similarly, you can have periodic arrangement of all these holes or rods, so that you get a conduction valence band like configurations in the optics. That means light can propagate in certain configurations. For other configurations, light cannot propagate. In particular, there will be a single frequency where these devices can be functional. So you can make a lot of devices with photonic band gap structures. You can also create defects like point defect, line defect, etc., and make new devices. Like in electronics, you have defect states. Similarly, you can make defect states in the spectrum of photonic band gap structures and propagate light in that and manipulate. So I'll show you some applications. One next slide, please. One more, please. This is explaining how light photonic band gap is formed. This is something like the electronic band gap. This is the spectrum of a photonic band gap structures. You see a stop band between around 1.5 to 1.7. You have a stop band. That means light cannot propagate. Okay, and the stop band characteristic is like a stop band in electronics. So it depends on the configuration, your structure of the crystal, its lattice constant, dielectric, refractive index difference. These are all the parameters which will govern what is the spectrum. Okay. Yes, let us go. One more. So once again, a lot of applications are there. People have thought about very high density integrated optics by using these photonic band gap structures. This is an example of a 4-channel Coombe filter. One of my student, Aditya, has worked on this, on Coombe filters. You have a bus waveguide, which is formed by using a line defect in a photonic crystal. And then there are point defects, C1, C2, C3, C4 are point defects. That means that the defect also is not there. And there are tapped waveguides. D1, waveguide 1, 2, 3, 4, and D1, D2, D3, D4 are waveguides and their detectors. So these waveguides can tap light from the bus waveguide. That's what you are seeing on the simulation on the right-hand side. So light can, lambda 1 can come out of the first port, lambda 2 can be coming out of the second port, lambda 3 in the third port, lambda 4 in the fourth port. Assuming that the input contains all the 4 frequencies, you can demultiplex or separate out these frequencies by using this Coombe filter. You can also see the spectrum here. Spectrum clearly shows that each of these small peaks correspond to a different wavelengths. So you can design them as shown in the table adjacent by using the different configuration. For example, you can change the size of the hole, etc. And you can make this Coombe filter operate at different frequencies. Okay, so this is an example. One more, please. This is a more sophisticated example, 12-channel Coombe filter. Idea is the same as earlier, but design is more involved, more and more simulations, and so on. Spectrum is cleaner. You can see in the next slide. So you can see the spectrum next. Yeah, you see that all the, of course, out of the band you forget because there is a lot of noise. In the stop band region, you have all the 12 frequencies equally spaced and so on. The bottom curve also shows how you can control what is the refractive index variation and what is the resonant wavelength and all those things. You can change the refractive index of the defect region to get different wavelengths at the output. Okay, yes, please, one more. So these are all spectral wave sensitivity with cavity variation and all those things that our students have studied. One more, please. So the final topic I would like to mention about the optical MEMS. I know that you have a separate lecture on optical MEMS. You can say that optical MEMS is a combination of microelectronics, micro-optics, and micromechanics. So you can make all the components like mechanical components, optical components, electronic components, all on a single wafer. Nowadays, the most popular material, as you know, is silicon for MEMS. So silicon-based optical MEMS have become popular. Of course, in future, we can think of MEMS in different new materials, but let us see a few examples. Let us go to the next slide, please. So this is an example of a mirrors. By using what is called the surface micromachining or MEMS technology, you can make mirrors in silicon. The left-hand side shows a mirror with all the flanges and all those things where they can move the mirror. Okay, the mirror can lie flat or it can pop out. Now it is at an angle, whatever you are seeing at an angle. But in the right figure, if you see, you can configure the mirrors such that light can be directed. You can use it in a routing environment in an optical network. So there are several input ports, several output ports. The mirrors are excited or lying flat or popped up, depending on the connectivity you need. For example, you can connect the first port to the last port, third port to the second port, and so on. That's what is shown here. It's a big technological problem and challenge to create bigger and bigger free space optical elements. So these are all free space switches. Okay, so you can switch the light with very, very small mirrors of the size of 100 microns or so, very small mirrors. Okay, so that is the technology of optical MEMS. Let us go to one more slide. So these are all various optical elements that people have formed on the wafer, started with the 2x2 switches, mirrors that you have seen, variable optical attenuators, different applications like networking applications, power control applications. All these things are possible. Some of them are available commercially also now. If you see any techno-commercial magazine like Laser Focus World or Photon Spectra, there will be a lot of advertisements about optical components. And if you want to set up a lab also, there's a lot of support available. A lot of vendors are there in India now. Of course, many of these are costly. All these equipment and so on are costly, but now they are available. Okay. We cannot do with homemade devices. Some simple ones we can do in our lab, but you depend on more sophisticated equipments for photonics. Let us go to one more or final slide if possible. So these are all the developed devices by MEMS technology, optical devices. Okay, so you can browse them later. I think we'll conclude at this. If there's last slide. Okay, this is an example that we made in our lab. One of my students, Dr. Patnaik, has worked on optical MEMS pressure sensor. What you see here is an interferometer. MZI is made on top of a silicon wafer and etch out a diaphragm. What you see, the trapezoidal region is a diaphragm. You can etch out in the silicon. So the diaphragm is etched out just below the arm of a interferometer. In the left picture, you see on one arm of the interferometer, the diaphragm is etched out. So if there is a uniform pressure on top of this silicon wafer, only that particular arm is affected and the other arm is not affected. And there's a phase difference between the light that is propagating in the reference arm and the sensing arm. At the output, you measure the light intensity and correlate with the pressure that is applied on the diaphragm. So that's how you can make a pressure sensor using optical MEMS. This can be made very easily. You don't need a very sophisticated technology for this. You can make by what is called the bulk micro machining, some of these devices. And of course, nowadays you have our nano center in ISC. You can come over here. You can make a lot of all these, some of these easier ones you can easily fabricate in ISC. So this is a response curve of that pressure on the x-axis and phase shift on the y-axis. Almost a linear response, you can say. But of course, it depends on the T mode that you are propagating and so many other factors. So typically, you can say you have 100 microradians sensitivity. So 100 microradians for kilopascal sort of sensitivity is what is possible in such a devices. Yes, please. One more. We'll conclude, I suppose. Yeah, I think we can complete our discussion today. If you have some questions, we'll take. A lot of references are there, a lot of special issues, a lot of books are there. I'm showing you was one of the earliest books, and recently a lot of collected works also are there. If you are working on this subject, if you want to get more and more insight and more deeper understanding of all these applications, devices, fundamentals, etc., there a lot of literature is available now. In particular, if you want to do research, definitely yes, you have to go for IEEE membership in Photonics Society. I hope some of you will be interested in IEEE Photonics activities after this FDP, and I welcome you to join this. And we will also we'll expand IEEE Photonics Society Bangalore chapter, and those who are interested to become the ExCom members or or form student branches of Photonics Society in their colleges, etc., will help you. And even now, we welcome your students also to take part in these FDPs and what is it called, your student internships and all these programs. I think maybe towards the end, one of the ExCom members can tell you about the Photonics Society chapter of Bangalore section. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. If you have some questions, I'll take.
Sir, good morning to you. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Sir,
definitely, yes.
sir, please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Please
Yes.
give me a minute. Sir, my name is Sridhar. I am
Yes.
actually working in RNSIT.
Okay.
And first of all, thank you very much. I think your lecture was really enlightening, especially for me, because I've worked extensively in the microwave field.
Okay.
I'm, worked on radars, etc.
Yes.
Now, it was really very, very interesting to see most of the applications of the microwave almost duplicated in this optical side.
Yes.
Like that comb filter or any of those which you are talking.
Yes.
I have seen them handling them. Now, my
Yes.
questions are three of them, sir. The
Yes.
first question is, in microwave also, we found this problem that like I use a TR tube or a power divider or any of these devices,
Yes.
the only method of maintenance was to replace. There
Okay.
is no other repair which I can do on it.
Okay.
It actually implicates very seriously on the cost issue, economics.
Yes.
Now, I am very sure, I think even your devices or the optical devices also have the same problem. That's what is my guess.
Yes.
If it is so, how economical it is to maintain a device like this in any of the applications, and how is it going to become very popular in the recent trend? That is
Okay.
one question. Second question is the surface of the devices. Like I have used Rathman lens for phased array antenna, etc.
Yes.
The surface is the most problematic one. If there is
Yes.
small line coming on it, it will spoil the whole reflectivity and the passing, etc. And I'm
Yes.
sure it must be more serious in the optical field.
Yes.
How do we really manage these surfaces? And if it is going to be hermetically sealed or something, I think that is the
Yes.
end of it. We can't even put our hand.
Yes.
That is the second question. The last question is, sir, you did not mention anything about the losses which are
Yes.
going to be there in the devices. If I'm
Yes.
going to use these devices on various applications, how is it possible to amplify the signal, especially in the receiving mode? If I am
Okay.
on the receiving mode, how do I amplify it? Is it
Okay.
possible or not possible?
Yes. So let us address one by one. So one of the important questions in integrated optics is, see, this is a technology is a solution. See, we are not going to make only one device. See, in microwaves also now, microwave ICs, you can make many devices on the same wafer. Even though the size may be increasing, but in VLSI, what people do is they build in redundancy. If some device doesn't work, it can be switched over into another device. There are a lot of options like that. So we can design our functionality or the device requirement, like whatever couplers or whatever devices, such that they are more robust to the effects such as perturbations and external effects. The other thing that you mentioned was you can have sealed properly. All these devices are well sealed so that external effects are less. For example, the surface effects. As you know, if the surface roughness, if the surface is rough, then light will scatter out, like in microwaves. So you can avoid such things by proper cladding layer. Instead of waveguide being exposed outside, you can have one more top layer on top of that. The waveguide is well protected inside, including from thermal effects. Then, of course, when you let me get the third question, please. Hello.
Sir,
Hello?
third question is losses. How do we really
See,
manage,
in
and
this
is there an
particular lecture, we
amplification?
did not go much deeper into theory, but all the a lot of important problems like the dispersion, losses, etc., are important. Loss is a technological problem, first of all, other than the radiation losses, etc. So losses can be there due to the absorption in these devices. But these devices are very small, of the orders of a few millimeters. So you can accept a little bit of losses, but it is also possible to amplify the signals on the chip. You can make optical amplifiers. So like in fiber optic amplifiers, you can dope the crystals with materials like erbium, etc. Many of you know that erbium doping is an important medium for amplification of light signals in fibers. Similarly, you can dope these waveguides with rare earth elements, you can make amplifiers on the chip. It is possible. But what I would like to mention is these are not like optoelectronic devices. Optoelectronic devices can be directly amplify signals by lasing effects. So you can make amplifiers on the chip. But of course, losses are important. So we can design and we can manipulate the signals such that we can manage the losses, dispersion, and all these effects. These are more complicated design-oriented problem. I have just only mentioned the basic, very functionalities of these devices. A lot of other issues will be there, like at the branches, then the coupling will not be 100%. All those can be handled. And they have already, there are a lot of applications where some of these are available commercially also. Okay, I hope I have touched upon some questions that you have raised.
Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful. And to tell you, the one which you talked about optical gyro, I did happen to see it in the DRDO and talk about it, etc. So it was fantastic, sir. Fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of close relationship with the microwave domain. All the principles we have got from microwaves.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, sir. It was wonderful listening to you, sir. Thank you so much. And we are really, very, very, thankful to you for educating us so well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Rajani has worked on microwave photonics. You can use delay lines for antenna beamforming and many, many things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, sure, sir. She is my colleague too. Thank
Yes.
you.
Any other questions? Before that, attendance Google form has been shared in the chat. So you can all fill the Google form. As all of you know, attendance is compulsory, right? So questions, please. Please introduce yourself before asking the question so that everybody knows. Thank you. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am Padmini Bhatt from Bangalore.
Okay.
Yeah, my doubt is actually I work in the optical networks. So
Okay.
in the networks, when we consider OXC or OADM, which
Okay.
I tried going to industry and looking into it, but I could not get it actually in BSNL, and they did not show. The couplers or the splicers, whatever you say, like, is it like inbuilt in the OXC? How is it, sir, actually? Can you?
Oh, nowadays, you see, as you know, the optical communication or optical networking industry is based on the fiber optics.
Yes, sir.
So you have all these devices based on the fiber couplers, and so on.
Yes.
But you need mux, demuxes, and all these devices in communications and networks.
Yes.
So what people do is they do optoelectronic devices. You convert the signal into electrical domain, demodulate, and then do all the signal processing, whatever you want, switching, routing, and so on, and then retransmit using the laser diodes once again. That is the technology that we have at this moment. Mux, demuxes, airdrop, and all these devices are based on that, not all optical.
Okay.
So you have a bottleneck of bandwidth. But in the literature and in practice and the commercially also, a lot of optical devices are available. Integrated optical devices for mux, demux, and all these applications are available. A few companies like Lucent Technologies, etc., are using them also. But all these are not very well established in practice yet.
Okay.
In optical networks. But so you can expect them. And already switching is an important domain that has come into the practice. Similarly, you can expect other elements also, like airdrop multiplexers, so many things. Passive ones are, of course, yes, quite easily possible with integrated optics.
So what should I consider? It is like electrical only now, whatever OX.
At this moment, if you are working, many people who are working on the networks, you look at the functionality. What is the function that you are looking? Whether it is fiber optics or integrated optics, you don't bother. But only thing is, you have a limitation on the speed.
Okay.
Whereas, if you are thinking of a small network on a chip, for example, optical computing chip, where you have much demuxes, communication, so many things on the same chip, if you are trying to do, then it is possible, fully optical is possible. And we can also hope, of course, there are commercial devices now, like mux, demuxes, array waveguide gratings. They are commercially available. If you want to experiment at the physical layer, if you want to work with the networks, we can buy those from the standard, some of these companies, and then you can configure them. But practically, they are not yet available.
Okay.
At R&D level, they are there.
Yes.
And of course, if you go to some of these conferences like OFC or so, every year they demonstrate more and more optical elements. So it is possible, and soon it's only economic feasibility and so on. For R&D, definitely yes, you can definitely use the components which are available.
Yes. Yes.
BSNL and all, they don't have all these things. They have only fiber optic components. At the
Yes.
most, the other integrated components that they have are transmit receivers, which
Yes.
which are optoelectronic devices. And whatever I showed, the modulators also are available now.
Yes.
So higher and higher speed people will go in the near future.
Yes. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Miss Asha has raised her hand. Madam, please ask
Yes.
your question.
Yes.
Hello,
Yes.
sir,
Please.
myself Dr. Asha Shende. I'm
Yes.
from Raisuri College, Pune.
Yes. Yes. Please.
Sir, currently I'm working on one project, photonics radar,
Okay.
under the SARB TARE proposal with
Okay.
the Defense Institute Advanced Technology,
Okay.
Girinagar.
Yes.
Sir, I'm doing some simulations using the Optisys software.
Okay.
And I have simulated one all these means, to be honest, simulation I could do by using the some papers, and but the calculations of all the ratios and all, that is not easily available for the optics, sir. So
Yes.
which how
See,
means
because
which
your
books
application is a new
that?
application.
Hmm.
So your
Okay.
application is a new application.
Yes,
So
sir.
fully it may not be there in that software. That's what I mentioned in the middle sometime. See,
Hmm.
Optisys will give you various systems. You can interconnect them. You can see how the signal is flowing, what is the data
Hmm.
range, and all those things. But
Hmm.
photonic radar will require different elements, like the
Okay,
phase
sir.
shifters, and so on
Hmm.
and so forth. Optical elements are needed. More and more optical elements are needed. I
Yes,
would
sir.
suggest may not be
Hmm.
sophisticated radar, but
Hmm.
certain elementary type of photonics radar you can simulate by yourself by taking the equations of the radar, by taking the
Hmm.
equations of all these in that, instead of using the, of course, Optisys software, you use it at a certain level up to bandwidth calculations, etc. But
Okay.
you can take the equations from photonics radar. Literature is available. You program them in MATLAB. You will get, you know what is happening inside, and you can get a very good result from that. Instead of using the commercial, we should know the limitations of the commercial software. Up to what extent we can use this, and what extent we cannot use this. Many people, what I find is simply because the software tool is available, they think that anything can be done with that. Because no one knew about photonics radar when they made this software. So it will not be there inside that. So I would
Okay. So
suggest, of course, a lot of groups are
any
there.
any books,
So a lot
sir,
of
that
people are there
will
interested
give
in
this the
photonics
flavor
radar
of
now. LRDE
hmm?
and all these people, they work on it.
Which
So you
sir?
must interact with those people who are working on that. And yes, LRDE, they are using that. For example, Dr. Meena will
Okay.
speak
Okay. Yes.
today
Yes.
or
Yes.
tomorrow on the
Huh.
radar application.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
they can
Okay.
integrate analog, digital, so many things for the radar application.
Okay. Okay.
So
Thank you.
integrated optics is definitely needed in
Yes,
photonics
sir.
radar.
Huh.
All the phase shifters, you can push it onto one chip instead of
Yes.
having a big, she will show you a big entire wiring and equipment of a very big room can be made onto a
Yes.
small
Yes.
chip.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Any,
sir. Thank you very much.
any other question? Thank you, madam. Any other question? No questions. Questions, please. Okay. So if there are no questions, I would like to thank Dr. T. Srinivas, our keynote speaker, for taking time out and giving a wonderful lecture on photonic integrated circuit. On behalf of RNSIT, we'd like to thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So the next session will start at 11:45. So link will be shared for session 2. So all of you can join at exactly 11:45. So So we'll start the next session at 11:45. Thank you. Attendance is shared. So before leaving the meeting, all of you should fill the Google form for attendance. Thank you. We'll see you at 11:45.